everybody. I just wanted to do a real quick little video here live for a couple minutes before I start my day as a truck driver. I'm getting so many messages from different Amish groups that first off, I'm shocked how many Amish have phones. So many different groups are just more liberal now, more modernized, whatever you want to call it. Not like my group. They're breaking away from the old order Amish system and they're becoming part of the new order system, whatever you want to call it. Some still call themselves old order that have reached out and they're like, hey, we're old order. We have phones. It's phones for certain things, business use and all of that. But the biggest thing I want to talk about in this clip is how many are showing up and for the first time to vote, and they're openly expressing that. They're openly talking about that. They're not afraid to talk about that. And I wanted to do this video because of the Amish that reached out in the last 2 weeks. The last one was yesterday, and they were talking about how they have always watched the news. So when you ask them, like, hey, how do you watch the news? You don't have electricity. You don't have a television. They always talk about how they have taxi drivers. They watch television at their house. The English neighbors, they watch television at their house, which makes sense because me and my dad, we were doing construction for English, outside people. We always call them English. And when we would take our lunch break to eat, we would always go watch television inside their house if they were okay with that. And they stay on top of the news. And this Amish fellow yesterday was talking about how they're getting more and more political. They're recruiting Amish to vote. They're allowing them to vote with their 4-digit exemption, that the Amish use. That ties them to the government. That's what verifies the group. Each group has their own identity with that exemption code. It's 4 digits. And then there's also a lot of Amish that have social security numbers, actual social security numbers, part of the system, which makes it even easier for them to vote. But a lot of people have asked, like, how do the Amish vote if they don't have social security numbers? Well, they don't necessarily have to have. This Amish fella here, he had a sense of humor. The one that reached out yesterday was telling me how they're able to vote just like the illegals that are coming in. I said, what do you mean by illegals? He goes, well, a lot of them's voting. They're not part of the system yet. They got some credit cards and they're taken care of before they even get to the border. He goes, we're not stupid. I'm like, man, you really have been getting into it. You really are reading up on stuff. He goes, we got the newspaper. We read this stuff. We're the headlines in the newspaper, which they've always been allowed to have newspaper. He goes, we're disturbed by what we're reading. And then he proceeds to tell me how they believe a lot of deceased people in 2020 voted. I'm like, dude, yeah, you know a lot more than I thought. He knew a lot more. He got into politics a lot more than I do. I don't hardly get into politics. I'm not really considered Democrat or Republican. I'm a Christian. I like the Bible, the Word of God. I'm amazed by it because it exposes religion, it exposes governments, it exposes everything. And so anybody that is running for biblical principles, that's what I focus on. I'm not neither Democrat nor Republican. So he goes on to talk about how they had a meeting in the Amish and they talked about how this is the first time they tried to wipe this man out. And he was referring to Trump, obviously. And he's talking about how we're not stupid. Us Amish people are not stupid. He said they're trying to wipe this man out after all the false accusations fell apart. The courts kept throwing all of this false stuff they kept coming up with. And he says, and then they try to wipe him out. And he says, when Trump first started, he says, we noticed that everybody liked him. He was a celebrity, Hollywood celebrity, and everybody loved him until he ran for president. He says, and then a certain group hated him because it went against their ideology, their agenda. And I said, man, as I listened to him, I'm like, wow, you really have a good point. He almost got me wanting to get involved in politics. I'm not joking. This Amish fellow knew everything. And he goes into detail, which made a lot of sense about how even the government wants this guy gone, and they do everything they could possibly do, even with that inside job, that plant job. That man wasn't alone. That young man, Crooks, he wasn't alone. And I believe that. And after he talked about this, he says, we're recruiting a lot of Amish to start voting, even if they don't have social security numbers. Register to vote, use your 4-digit exemption, and get in there and vote because we got to take care of business if we want our freedom of religion. He says, we have a government takeover right now that it's good versus evil. And I'm like, oh, now you have my attention. It is good versus evil. I already know that. So I just wanted to hop on here and kind of talk about that. All of you guys that thought the Amish are incapable of getting involved in stuff like that. My group does not. It's against the old order Amish, where I come from. It's against their religion to vote. We were not allowed to vote. We were not allowed to have any ties with the government whatsoever. That's why we were forbidden to have a social security number. But my group is different than what I'm seeing now. When I first left the Amish, I couldn't even explain this about the New Order Amish like I do now. I've learned a lot about them. They follow my videos. A lot of them have gotten away from the mainstream church, Amish church, and they're running on their own system rather than being so religious with so many rules. And a lot of these guys have been so far advanced, he said, we in this community in northern Indiana, he goes, we don't even drive a horse and buggy until Sunday. I said, well, let me ask you a question. Why just Sunday? Well, that's the holy day. That's when we go to church to honor God. Oh, but what about the rest of the 6? I started challenging him a little bit. And he says, oh, well, we're just different. He says, we drive tractors and we have a lot of English taxi drivers and we buy the cars. We own the cars. We register them in our name. We just don't have a license to drive it. We hire them to drive it, but we own the car. I said, yeah, you're a different breed than where I come from. You are like the English version of Amish because you don't fall under the actual old order Amish category where I'm from. And I explained to him how my group, obviously, they try to keep the original system that was inherited by their forefathers. They apply the articles of faith. And he goes, yeah, I know. I've seen your videos. He goes, you come from a cult. I said, as an Amish guy, you just called my group a cult? I just started busting up. This guy was a blast. He was a treat to talk to. But anyway, I just wanted to get on here and kind of talk about that, because the more and more Amish are reaching out in the last couple of weeks and they're so disturbed by this whole Trump thing, and I never saw that coming. They are upset. They are getting involved, and they're fed up to their neck. And I thought it was hilarious. I found it hilarious enough. I'm like, I'm going to hop on here and just talk about that, because a lot of them, they are voting and they're finding ways to vote. And they're encouraging other Amish, even my groups, to try to vote. My group won't do it. They don't get involved in politics. But I think they should. I really think they should, because if you want freedom of religion to be Amish, you should get involved. You should vote who you want to that best serves your interests and your religion. If you want freedom of religion, you should get involved. If you want freedom of religion and you want your freedom, you should even fight for this country. I mean, you should enlist in the Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, all of that. You should get involved. Not just sit back and say, oh, we've got to turn the other cheek. Well, if we'd have done that and turned the other cheek like my group says, would have been wiped off the face of this earth by other enemies for hundreds of years ago. I mean, just saying. Anyway, there you go. I'll leave you guys with this. Get involved, because this Amish guy got me fired up, and I'm starting to get involved. They're standing up for what's right. They're standing up for who they want. And I was very encouraged by that. It encouraged me to get more involved and start voting. And when he talked about how they are looking right through the mainstream media and how it's just propaganda. They're feeding the people stuff that they want you to turn against Trump. And they want to turn people against him to the point where they will make up whatever. And now all of the Supreme Court and all these, it's all being thrown out. All these false accusations are being thrown out. And they're not stupid. Amish people are not stupid. There's people out here in the English world that are more deceived by the propaganda and the media and the mainstream media than the Amish themselves. They are smart enough to see right through it. And they're not part of the agenda. They see it and they expose it and they're speaking out against it. He said they even had an English driver that no longer wanted to drive for them when they made it known they're going to vote for Trump. And I'm like, well, that shows you the problem we have. You don't have a problem with them. You don't ridicule them because they're voting Democrats. So why should he just no longer do business with you because you like Trump? I mean, politics and Democrat, Republican are so divided. It causes division. It causes anger. It just causes crimes. People are so angry they're willing to take action. 20 years ago, you didn't have that. So the Amish notice that. They see what it's causing, and they know there's a reason for it. And that's why they're rising up, and they're going to roar. They're going to shake the gates of hell in America. Here comes the Amish. There's 250,000 of them in America. They're ready to vote, man. Go